little buttons.
Okay guys, thanks for giving up your Saturday afternoon. I know it's a big day, the finals, and a number of you have just come off I know it's not called this, but I still call this the top of the north last week in Townsville, so we certainly appreciate it. Today we're going to talk about how you as coaches can have a positive impact on the well-being of your young athletes. It's not going to be death by PowerPoint. I know sometimes people walk into courses like this and see a PowerPoint and think, I've just gone to 6 seminars this week at work and stuff through this. It is going to be a conversation, and that's a word that you'll hear a lot through this presentation, is conversations, and it's one of the big themes of what we're trying to do with the coach development, both BA and through Peter's help with BQ, is encourage all coaches to have more conversations. Without getting on my soapbox, society's now less and less conversations because we use text, we use email, we use a whole myriad of communication apps and things to communicate, which has really helped us in society, but it's not a great environment for coaching. Coaching is a people environment, and conversations are king. Before we start the PowerPoint, just grab a pad and a pen or your phone, whatever you need. I just want you to write down 2 reasons why you coach. Just jot down or think about 2 reasons why you coach. And while you do that, think about the most important element for you as a coach. What's your biggest priority as a coach? So when we started having some dialogue and conversation with colleagues and other coaches and associations and volunteer coaches around the country about this very issue, the well-being of young athletes, and we're all aware of the increased prevalence in mental health and issues related to that. It got me to thinking, why do I coach, and what do I think coaching is about? And these are 3 elements that I came up with as priorities for me as a coach, and how it fits to make sure that you've got good relationships with your players. And if you've got good relationship with your players, you're in a better situation to help them and be more aware of their well-being, how they're going as young people, and have an influence here. One of the things we realised when we first started talking about this was a lot of coaches, obviously anyone who coaches basketball has got a really strong empathy for young people. You give up endless hours, you give up all your time to do. You wouldn't do that if you didn't have such a really strong empathy and care for young people. But we also had, when we started to have some conversations about well-being, was a really intimidating environment for coaches. I had experienced coaches say, hey, whoa, I'm not a psychologist. And I was shocked. I said, no, I didn't say you were a psychologist. No, I can't do that. That's above my pay scale. And in some ways, those people were right. Obviously, we don't want people to be Dr. Google. But, sometimes well-being is not all about mental health. Well-being is not always all about injuries. It's not about even any sort of conditions. It's more about the role you're playing in making sure the players feel valued, they feel safe, they're learning, and they're enjoying. And that doesn't matter what level it is. One of the most valuable things to me as a coach is relationships with former players. You know, that to me, that's the coolest part of coaching. When I come back here and I run into people that I coached at some level 25 years ago, it is amazing, 25 years when I was here, right? It's the coolest thing to do, right? You know, now I'm at an age now where people I've coached are now doing roles similar to mine. And that's the biggest buzz out of coaching for me. So we spoke about 3 key elements of coaching. Create a caring, learning environment, that's an obvious one. Know your players. How do you get to know your players? More conversations. One of the most powerful tools in coaching is questions. You know, when I first learned to coach, my mentors were all about my way or the highway, and this is how you did it, right? And it was a great way to learn. I was fine with that. I'm lucky to have some great mentors that said, this is how you do it. But we didn't ask enough questions. We probably gave a lot of answers. You know, I think it's fair to say we provided a lot of answers, but we didn't ask enough questions. Right? Now, what's going to give you a stronger relationship? Providing answers prior to the question or asking the question, right? So knowing your players and then building a community is a big one. And when I say a community, we talk to our players, our coaches, sorry, say, okay, who's in their community? I'll give you an example. Obviously, Tamari Weakness has been with us at the Centre of Excellence now for 2.5 years. It's funny, someone the other day said, how old is Tamari? I said, oh, I'm not sure if he's 17 yet. And the guy said, oh, I thought he was about 23. It seems he's just been, you know, people have known who Tamari is for so long, but part of the way that we've done to help and guide, develop Tamari, and we think he's going to be a very, very good player and he's going to be a boomer, is through his community. Through Aaron Fern, through Kerry, through the people here. You know, we have a lot of conversations with his community, right? And we've realised that's so important. So, who's in your players' community? Obviously, in their, and I'm not saying the community of Cairns or Mossman, or I'm saying in their circle. You know, because we know now, especially the league players, their community, we're trying to get Ben Simmons, Ben Simmons will be on our national team. His community is very different now than most players in the NBL because he's an NBA All-Star. So he's got personal trainers, he's got personal coaches, he's got managers, he's got marketing people. That's Ben's community. Now, 15 years ago, we said, oh, we're not dealing with that. We're not coaching them, we're coaching Ben. Well, guess what? We don't deal with that community and establish relationships. We don't get to coach them, right? So understand their community and build a community around your team. So wellbeing is not just about, right now obviously it's very topical with the high prevalence or more publicity now about mental health and mental wellbeing, but we all know that there's a significant challenge for young players for their physical well-being. So you've got players here in Cairns that are playing local competition. They're probably training for their local competition team. They're playing representative basketball. They're training with their rep team. They might be in the SPP with Basketball Queensland and doing stuff with Kerry. They might be on a regional team. They might be on a state team. They might be on a school representative team. They may have a school basketball program. We had an athlete come to the Centre of Excellence recently, and I'd known her since she was 3 years old, and I ran into her after about 6 weeks she'd been at the Centre of Excellence, and I said, how you going? She goes, oh, it's been so good. I said, oh, that's good. I said, what have you liked most about it? She goes, oh, it's so good to come here and get a rest. So she's at the elite training centre in the country. And initially I was insulted. She said, oh, it's been so good to come here and get a rest. Then I unpacked it with her, had conversations, asked questions. She was playing local comp, training for a local comp team, playing under 18 rep basketball, training for that, playing youth league, which is under 22s in New South Wales, training for that, playing Waratah, which is the equivalent of QBL, training for that, and she was in a school program. 8 things she was doing, plus she was in the state team, plus she was in an elite. She had 10 commitments, but even more confusing for her, she had 6 coaches. 6 coaches. All 6 valued her, cared for her, wanted to support her, wanted to develop her, but they all wanted a piece of her. Right? So it was a really great lesson for me. Again, my first thing was like, what do you mean you come here for a rest? We go on this scholarship and you got, but it's like, at least I just have to go to school, go to practice with one coach, hear one voice, do one thing. I don't have to drive across town and go to weights and whatever. And then we realised that we didn't know her community then. And her physical well-being was diabolical. She was just tired. Just the quality of sleep was poor. We did a session here on Friday morning at 6 a.m. with some elite players. And 2 of those elite players played last night at 6:30. So in the 4th quarter, I was watching it with great guilt as I watched Indy and Shanice run up and down. They've been high functioning for 13 hours because they had to come to this and have expectations. They had to go to school. Then they had to get here. They've been really high functioning for 13 hours. Is that fair in terms of a physical and emotional? And so again, you need to understand that. What else are they doing? What you've got them doing, and you want to invest in them so heavily, you've got to be aware of what else they're doing. You're the adult. Because they won't tell you. Who's had a player come to them and say, look, I'm sorry coach, I just can't do this, I'm just tired. They don't tend to do that because they're high achievers and they want to win and they're competitors and all those things. So how do you know what else they're doing? Conversation. More questions. Know their community. Talk to mum. Talk to dad. Talk to their community. Find out what else they're doing, and then you can help manage it. Because we've found in basketball that more than 1/3 of injuries in 11 to 17-year-old athletes are overuse injuries. Right? And we know from research that fatigued players have a far higher prevalence of injury than players that aren't fatigued. If you're already injured to some degree, the percentage increase of potential for another injury is significant. And I'm not trying to be a pseudo-sports scientist, but look what just happened in the last week in the NBA. Some really sad things happened. No one died, but someone was injured, came back, had clearance, all that stuff, then had a catastrophic injury. In other words, something that's going to take them out for a season. 2 games later, someone had been injured, hamstring not related, has a catastrophic injury, ACL. Now I don't know if they're linked, but if you work, if you do some basic research, that the prevalence of an injured player sustaining another injury is just, it's frightening. And the days of, hey, you've got to be tough. We're still in those days. People have to be tough, but that's not toughness, it's stupidity. All right? But do players know? When we talk about toughness, do they know what toughness is? You're talking about resilience. You're talking about self-discipline. You're talking about punctuality. All those. When you talk about toughness as a coach, that's what you mean. You don't mean. You don't mean. But do they? right? And a badge of honour in Australian sport is, for years, play through injuries. That's been a badge of honour. You know, oh, this guy's played 230 games in a row. How tough is he? Well, I'm sure he or she is really tough, but I bet you they've played with significant injuries and put at risk really significant welfare issues. All right? See the bigger picture. What's happening now is not the most important thing. Now, it is to a 14-year-old. It is to a 12-year-old, whatever else. My 7-year-old son's missing his local comp day game today, and it's my fault because I'm away and he has to go with his mum, and he's devastated. And I am, if I'm not the worst person in the world, I'm in the semi-finals right now. Right? But we know there's a bigger picture. We know that he's 7 and there's a game next week. He doesn't. So we have to provide leadership. Now that's parenting leadership, but coaching leadership is the same. The one thing I would say to you, and I'm happy to say this because you know I live it as a coach and we live it as a national body. If a player is injured and the healthcare professional says they shouldn't play, end of conversation. You know, oh, but it's a semi-final. Oh, but it's Marlins Townsville. Like, you know what? If we can just get 30 minutes out of her tonight, she doesn't have to play next week against Ipswich. It's okay. But I'll tell you what, Townsville, we've got to play. Now, what's the player thinking? You know, I'm right. It's Townsville. I'm good to go. Right? If a healthcare professional says this, end of conversation. I shouldn't talk, but I'm assuming no one here has a medical degree. No one's a doctor or a sports scientist, right? Okay. So you don't know. We've had it with Penny Taylor at the Olympic Games. She injured herself in the quarterfinal. She had a grade 3 ankle. And we had to play China in the semi-finals to play for a gold medal. She said, I'm good to go, give me a medal. Grade 3 in 2 days. There's just no way. But it's Penny Taylor. She's as close to Wonder Woman as any player I've ever coached. She did round-the-clock ice, she did compression, whatever else. The head coach said, no way, we're not doing this. And she was in tears, she was begging the pick, she was trying all sorts of things. No, there's no way we can't do it. And when we're making that decision, like we're playing China in front of 22,000 Chinese in Olympic semi-final. Surely we could get, you know, and you start saying that to yourself. And then you look at the athlete and go, there's no way. Right? So that's a big one because you're the adult. That's really crucial. Now you might think, well, this is all common sense. Is it? We see all the time injured players feeling pressure. Now I'm not suggesting for a minute that you as coaches would put that pressure on, that you would apply that pressure. But you've got to be cognizant on what the athlete's feeling and what they're thinking. I did this presentation in Sydney last week, and I said, well, how are we meant to know that? We can't read minds. And it was a great, I didn't have any problem with that comment. I said, well, ask questions. Have a conversation. Right? A lot of the times, particularly at high levels, we don't have the conversation because we don't want the truth. You know? So I think that part of it is really, really important in both aspects of physical welfare. So how do we help manage well-being in general? And as I said, you'll hear that term a lot more, is have more conversations. And it sounds so simple, but it's something that we could all do just in general. We could all do in our work life, and we certainly can do as coaches. Who's been involved with a team that's had a Facebook closed group, a WhatsApp group, or some sort of communication tool to You know, most people do that now, and it's everyone's go-to. All right, we've got a team, so we've got to get a WhatsApp group, and everyone's done, and it's a big file, great. And you go, well, this is really organised, and it's valuable. Well, why don't we just have conversations? We have, in our junior national team, the first thing the managers do, they create a WhatsApp group. So they're at a meeting and say, Paul's late. So I just message Paul on the WhatsApp group. Instead of going, hold on, I'll just see where Paul is. Is that going to be a major issue? For 2 minutes I go and find Paul, we have a conversation, and there's a chance to have a flight path conversation too. And what I mean by a flight path conversation, so while we're walking from Paul's room to this room, we're just having a chat. And the chat's not, why were you late? It's not that. How's things going? And you can bet in that 90-second flight path conversation, you're getting some more information. I'll send to Kerry to send out. I went to a presentation from a gentleman named Michael Poulton, P-O-U-L-T-O-N. He's a performance person and a team building and high performance person in the AFL. He was at the Gold Coast Suns, and if anyone knows the Gold Coast, they've got their oval there at Carrara, it's called Metricon, and then their weight room and their offices and whatever else are probably the equivalent to maybe the end of the car park. Right, so you've got to leave the oval, walk down there. What they put in place is all their coaches, and as you know, the AFL, they have more coaches than Telstra has staff, is a flight path rule. So while the players are going from the oval, walking back to get an ice bath, to lift weights, to have a meal, do whatever else, one of the coaches would get next to a player and say, "How you going, Adrian? How was that?" And of course, initially the player's like, "Oh yeah, well I should have kicked it on my left foot." No. How's things at home? "Oh, you just had a little one? How's that? Getting any sleep?" And then they would literally have, they call it flight path conversations for the 3-minute walk. All right? And at the end of the 3-minute, "All right, mate, see you, have a good one." Bang. They would make notes, not spoke to Adrian, checked on welfare of new baby, that just, right? And they'd have a list. And at the end of the week, they'd go, "Hey, you know what? We haven't spoken to Pete this week. No one's got across his flight path." And you know who they found who they hadn't got across? The senior players. "Oh, Haji's fine. This one, he's fine. That guy's fine." Said who? Alright, so just that is important. And you say, well, how do I do it here? You get to practice early. Kids are shooting around,